Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnā koutou I ngā mana, I ngā rio, I ngā hau o whā. Tēnā koutou katoa. It's an honour for me to introduce our first keynote speaker of eResearch 2025. She is the Chief of Staff of Local Contacts, and she specialises in supporting Indigenous communities to manage their intellectual and cultural property rights and data sovereignty within information systems. I've said it's an honour to introduce her, not just because that's what you say at the start of an introduction, but because, for two reasons really. Firstly, it's inspiring to have a wahine leader opening a conference like this, and it's not yet quite common enough to go unacknowledged. And second, I guess I wear a few different hats at Nessie, but they all relate to research data in some sense. And we've worked on a couple of projects that explore and enable Maori data sovereignty and use local contexts in some of those projects. And I think really as an organisation, as a sector, we're coming to recognise the importance of this kaupapa. So I guess it's the 10-year anniversary of Te Mana Raranga this year, and it feels like now is the time. And I think as part of acknowledging that, we need to recognise the people, the mahi, the expert knowledge, that lived experience they've brought, and really, I guess, that determination and resilience to bring about change, because change is never easy. So please join me in welcoming, I guess what I meant to say there is, and our speaker embodies this. So that was, sorry, that was the point. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Janette Hamilton Pearce of Te Whānau a Apanui for our keynote. Welcome.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Nā mihi atu ki a koe, Claire. Kia ora mō tēnā, mō te mihi ki a hau. Te mihi tuatahi, nā mihi atu ki Jamal, te kai whenua, mana whenua o tēnei wahi, Jamal, kia ora no tātou. Nā mihi atu te tuarua, nā mihi atu Professor Pearce, George, kia ora George, and Tessa, Donna, Nessa, and as well as Nisha and Jana. Nā mihi atu ki a koutou katoa, te kaimahi o tēnei kaupapa. Nā mihi atu ki kaitahu, nai tahu, te mana whenua o tēnei wahi. Nā mihi atu ki Genomics, Aotearoa, Rienz, Nessie, nā mihi atu ki a koutou, te kaiwhakahaere, nā kaiwhakahaere o tēnei kaupapa, tēnā koutou katoa. O tērā, nā mihi atu ki a koutou katoa, nā e rangahau, nā kaupapa e pāna ki a tātou katoa. O tērā, ko wai ahau, ko Janette Hamilton Pearce ahau, he uri au Te Whānau a Apanui, he Chief of Staff ahau, nō reira mauri ora ki a koutou. Thank you everyone. Jamal set everything in place, as well as Claire, as well as George. Kia ora mō tātou, nā mihi ki a koutou katoa. I do want to thank, I've thanked a lot of everyone, but I do want to thank my whānau. My whānau for supporting me to get me here. My whānau, even my tupuna, who chose me to do all this mahi and be here today, standing here, and really talking about local context, about supporting iwi rights, and interest in data and research. That's been me, actually. In a nutshell, that is me, through really a lot of work of 28 years in computing, in information systems, and really looking at the why and the what of iwi data sovereignty. So that's why I'm here, and I live, work and play from my ancestral homelands and ancestral lands of Te Whānau a Apanui, Te Kaha. If any of you want to come fishing there, anybody do fishing? We've got the best fishing, and you're always going to get a crayfish, okay? Because that's where the crayfish is right in front of my space, about 50 metres in front of my house is where everybody puts all their crayfish pots, so you can come there. I want to honour our iwi leaders, past, present and future, and emerging, because of them being moko-led. Our grandchildren are what lead us every day at home. And as the Chief of Staff, looking at our amazing team, New Zealand here in New Zealand and over in New York and over in America. So I get to look after everyone at home. I get to look after those in America, and I get to look after just from my computer at home while I'm looking at everybody getting crayfish. So that's me. That's me in a nutshell. So here today I'm talking about supporting iwi rights and interest in data and research. And I do want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to stand here to talk about this mahi today. So kia ora. On your tables, there's a QR code to get the notes, to get everything you need from me on this kaupapa today, as well as our local context, who are we, what we do, and also how we do it. I'm going to talk at the beginning about what local context is, traditional knowledge, labels and biocultural labels, and I know some of you are in here, especially Manaaki Whenua. Those in Manaaki Whenua, I love you. You're just amazing. You know, and I'm going to show that too, how you're just amazing in all the work that you do. Manaaki Whenua, Genomics Aotearoa, we've been working, partnership is so important. George said it, it's the partnerships we do, and that's what's making iwi data sovereignty really important for us with local context. A little bit of the what and the why, a little bit, I know you all want the how. I know it's the how. I'm going to talk a little bit about the how, because the how really comes after the what and the why. Those in data science, those in the technological realms, those in the how we use our API. The hub overall is very quickly. But finishing off with some questions and answers. So you can use those QR codes to get everything in terms of the links of the examples I'm going to show you, in terms of how to contact us, where to get started. Everything's in that QR code. So what really came about when it came to local context, just a little pretext, anything about research. I come from this book from Linda Tuhiwai-Smith, Decolonising Methodologies. If you've heard of it and you've read it, good, because it really is the beginning, the middle, and the end on anything, for me, that has to be done with research. So this is where we start to look at what intellectual property and law and colonisation has done in terms of research when it comes to our people. She already does it, Professor Linda Tuhiwai-Smith. She does it really well. I don't need to go over that, but it's where you would get all the information that you need about research. But local context. So in some ways, when it comes to colonisation, local context is an intervention of that. Many colonial policies and these institutions in Aotearoa, since 1856, when it came to Isaac Featherington, he wrote, "The Māoris are dying out. Our plain duty as good, compassionate colonisers is to smooth down their dying pillow, then history will have nothing to reproach us with." That's been how iwi have been looked at since 1856. Now, if we're not here, then that means that the data that you hold about us is probably wrong, missing, or misinterpreted. Because that is a narrative. The narrative about iwi, Māori, tangata whenua, whatever you want to name us, that's the policies by which you will look at with your research institutes, with your databases, with whatever is happening about us. We're not existing. We're not existing in that. And that's the intervention that local context is about. Not just here in Aotearoa, the whole world with Indigenous peoples on Indigenous data sovereignty. So what's the intervention? It's the innovation of TK, BC, traditional knowledge, biocultural labels and notices. That's all we do. we look at that from an innovation perspective. So local context came around in 2010 with Kim Christian, Jane Anderson, New York University, Washington University, and started working with Indigenous peoples over there to really start looking at making a non-profit and register with the Navajo Nation. That came about in 2022. So that's really the organisation. Where are we at the moment all over the world in terms of communities, which is Indigenous tribes, institutions and researchers, is really mainly around Northern America and here in Aotearoa around here, but all over the world as we grow. Communities really is about tribes, iwi, hapu, and then institutions are those organisations that majority of you in, and then the research, of course, is an individual person that collects information about those researchers, about what their topics are in research. So that's just a bit of terms and the connections that we have all over the world, and my job really is to look after the team that looks after all those dots on there. We look after all those dots, and we are growing exponentially. What's the real problem that we're trying to really address here? The real problem really is that if you have data of us as iwi, there is a position maybe that in archives, museums, research institutions, any online database, that it might be misrepresenting us. It might be wrong, it might be missing, it might be just Māori, it might be just those kind of, that information really. I know it's okay to have the technology as the technology that sits there, and the technology has a structure, but I'll talk about how the structure in itself doesn't really work anyway. So provenance, whose provenance is really important here, and really who holds the rights to that data is an issue with iwi. Therefore, when it comes to research, and research is happening at a click of a button, everything that happens with that click of a button, it gets moved over in seconds all over the world, misrepresenting and missing data that happens. So really, issues of ownership within the technology that you hold, and the open data, anything that's around information that is about me, my mokopuna, my iwi, my hapu, my whānau, and how that goes around the world, misrepresenting us, is the real issue that we're trying to solve here. How do we do that? Traditional knowledge and biocultural labels. Really what you see there is Indigenous communities, they can reinforce rights by applying TK and BC labels to any data, and that's the moment that happens on technology is when iwi data sovereignty happens. It's at that point. But engaging and disclosing and collection care notices is the point by which institutions and researchers can disclose you have those collections, can say that you have those collections, can show that you are maybe incomplete attributions, provenance to that data. It is a new way of kind of feeling the energy that, hey, yeah, this all happened, but let's just have a way of disclosing that now so that we can talk, have partnerships, have better partnerships and relationships when it comes to meeting up with iwi. So that's why we have those two. So iwi have the opportunity to add appropriate provenance, not just provenance, not attribution, but also protocols and permissions to the data that sit in your service provider, sit in your repositories. Only iwi can put on labels, the labels that are there. Oh. And this is what they look like. So there's 20 traditional knowledge labels and 10 biocultural labels. Manaaki whenua biocultural labels, put on 670,000 samples. Wow, just amazing to do that, of the biocultural labels and notices with 3 iwi. So I'm going to show you that in a moment. But the traditional knowledge labels, they are really around cultural heritage, cultural authority, and then there's biocultural labels around biodiversity and sampling. And then we make sure that we get provenance, protocols, and permissions. So there's different areas by which you can look at these notices and labels. So here we have a provenance label, which is a TK multiple communities label, looking at how the data that you have collected about iwi in a space could be around multiple communities. Protocols, TK seasonal, is that seasonal information that is in databases may be related to a song, for example, that is only given in a certain time of the year, whether that's winter, whether that's summer. And then a permissions one is that TK non-commercial, is that we can have a non-commercial tied to this information, but there's also commercial, TK commercial, BK non-commercial, BC, commercial and BC non-commercial. So you can start to look at when non-commercial use can be for that information and commercial use can be for that information. So that's the permissions, protocols and provenance. Very, very clear on which parts that they are related to. A label customisation by Indigenous communities has the icon. So the icon is recognisable over the whole world. It doesn't change. It stays the same, and it is that, it's an icon that is there to sort of show that it's about provenance here, in this term with traditional knowledge attribution. The title itself can be changed for the Indigenous communities that want to change it, and the text, that's templated text, the Indigenous communities can change that based on their languages and based on their what they want to put into that description of that specific label. And they would go through and look at the labels. Here is an example, Te Whakatohea, TK labels, a Waiata app for their songs that they did with computer science at Waikato University. So you can see which one of the labels that the Whakatohea had chosen for each part of their songs. And this one is mainly for Te Whakatohea, and then they have an area which is open for anyone outside of Te Whakatohea. Here they've got a TK verification kua mana label and how they have described that icon, that title, as well as that templated text. And that goes through all of each of the different songs those labels are attached to. So you can actually download it on Apple and you can download it on Google Play. And it's also in the QR code that's on the desk. Now this is a fabulous, fabulous example that all researchers in this room will be really, really happy to know about, especially if you're doing a thesis, a master's thesis, PhD thesis, or if you're supervising anyone to do that. This is one of the best, well, I think it's one of the best. All of the New Zealand ones are the best, all the Aotearoa examples. Te Roroa. Te Roroa BC label is on top, BC provenance is on top of a master's science thesis with Fern Donovan, and she has done so much research in terms of marine in Te Roroa lands, which is up in the North Island, and with Victoria, Tāoho and Te Roroa, and as well as with Fern. The three of them got together and said, yes, we're going to put a BC label on this research, and that has been done. Can I just give a round of applause on how really amazing that is? To have that kind of partnership together and put a BC label right at the front for Te Roroa. Te Roroa has done absolutely amazing, not just in this area, but also in eDNA. eDNA that's happening on their lands and ensuring that BC labels, TK labels are really put on everything that happens with research. The next step, this is where Te Roroa is, the next step really is, to start to have these relationships and to build in that the labels are part of the discussion when it comes to what happens next on Te Roroa. So there's kind of that memorandum of understanding that happens. So we're really, really proud of this one. This one on the outside lands of Maine. Maine is Passamaquoddy. Passamaquoddy had worked with the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress have put in the 3 labels there for Passamaquoddy and Passamaquoddy's language. The actual record itself had very little in it about when it came to the war songs, wax cylinders with Jesse Wilkes-Fuchs collection, and that collection really just had like 2 lines really. And mainly what I really want to get to is that the labels are there right up the top next to the title, and Library of Congress have really worked on getting that done. But the information rich that comes after that from Passamaquoddy had really started to enrich the data, bring alive Passamaquoddy in terms of what was in those wax cylinders. So this is what I wanted to say. The Rights Advisory in Library of Congress was with the Peabody Museum, and the Peabody Museum, Harvard University, had the rights. But Library of Congress says we're going to put the traditional knowledge labels of Passamaquoddy above the rights of Harvard University. Now, we can sit here and go, that's just mind-blowing in itself for that to happen. But what happened after that, Harvard University moved their rights, took their rights away and says, we're leaving that with Passamaquoddy. So this wasn't a legal situation that happened here. This is extra legal. The labels are not about legally doing this in the rights advisory field. This is about sort of saying cultural authority really is recognised that with Passamaquoddy, we are going to remove us as the rights holder. Can I get another one? That's huge. That's huge. When it comes to IP law, that is huge. So that's huge. So what else is local context doing is we can help to move into that realm as well. Institutions, researchers, data repositories, they all need to look at disclosing the Indigenous, the iwi collections that they have available. How can you do that? Notices. You can do that with notices today if you want to. Today you would go look and you'd say, we would like to have put an engagement notice on our collection saying that we're open for engagement. We'd like to put a disclosure notice and sort of say that we have incomplete attribution. We have biocultural information here. We have traditional knowledge information here we want to look at. I know majority will be into that BC label, but really it's both of those worlds that need to be considered. Collection care notices. The collection care notices is mainly in-house with staff on how they've worked with iwi or Indigenous peoples to sort of say, how can we look after the collection of these samples that you may be picking up and part of that data management process. They're in-house, they're with the staff, and they've come recently with the Museum of American Society. So it's just amazing how this keeps opening up, but institution, researchers today can actually start using the notices to start looking at your Indigenous and iwi collections that you have available. Same kind of notation, the icon stays the same, the title stays the same, and the text stays the same, and then you can add to that. Here are some examples. We have the University of Tasmania and in Australia, open to collaborate with the University of Tasmania. So, and they've been there right from the beginning, really, and starting to go work through in their library how they can use the open to collaboration. This is a really, really important one. Rose Barrowcliff, she is Indigenous Australian, and Rose had sort of done her research, came to local context and sort of says, this research is about my people, and I really want to make sure as a researcher I am disclosing that this information belongs to my iwi, but she says, I'm a researcher, and I says, as a researcher, put a traditional knowledge notice on it, and she's done that with archives and museums. All of yous who are doing publications, whoa, put a notice on it. Just amazing in terms of how that happened with publications and is happening all over. In Orchid, we're doing that same thing in terms of notices, adding notices to your Orchid IDs. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, the how. That was kind of the why and the what. This is the how. This baby here. The hub. The hub now is, oh my gosh, it's just growing so much. We want to do a community account. That's the Indigenous iwi, tribes, nations. We're wanting to do an institute account. Those are all the institutes that are here, from museums to universities. A researcher account, individuals. You can do a researcher account, and service providers, which are really the database holders. Those that are holding the information itself. So we use the hub. We do not use the hub to take the data from wherever it is and hold it. That stays exactly where it is. We are not a repository ourselves. But we are intermediaries between the Indigenous communities, iwi, as well as the institutes and researchers, to put the notices and the labels on the data where it lives. Simple. Just keep it simple. It's so simple to think that that can be done. And that's what the hub does. I know there's a lot of information here. As an institution and a researcher, you have to do a project in relation to where that Indigenous collection data is, talk about it. Are you adding a TKBC or an AI notice to it? Who are you wanting to then connect to? Okay, though, I need to say this is not a friend request. We're not sending friend requests out to all the iwi out there and says, be my friend. Be my friend. Relationships are key. Must have those relationships before you send this out. This can be done in 2 seconds. All of this technology can be done in 2 seconds. Those relationships are still key. If you start sending these out like friend requests, what's going to happen? It's going to get ignored. This is not Facebook, and you're not sending out a friend request. You have already done your relationships with Te Roroa, Te Whakatō here. You've already done those relationships. That is still number 1 and key, and takes the longest. Where you want to start is looking at the relationships. So this is just really how the hub collects the information about who the institute and the researchers want to communicate in terms of the description of the collections, samples, data that you have. Manaaki whenua, that's why I said I love Manaaki whenua, because, oh my gosh, 671,000 samples that BC label is sitting on today. And here we've got Ngāti Maru. Ngāti Maru have their BC label on there, and they've got the BC provenance and the BC consent verified. The provenance sort of says, we are Ngāti Maru, we definitely can say that this has come from our lands, this has come from our waters, this has come, well, lands, of course, Manaaki whenua, and that this is who we are. This in relationship to this sample is who we are. In relation to verification, BC consent verification, this is, we verify that we have gone through this process. Now, what Manaaki Whenua did that was so important is that we spent a whole year on relationship building, on policies that were in Manaaki Whenua that actually stopped this process from ever happening. So, yes, look at your policies. Look at your relationship building. Look at how policies actually hinder those relationships, or how you look at iwi. It's a mindset shift. It's a total mindset shift. And that happened through Manaaki Whenua. And it happened to the point that the technology was over here. The relationship building and the policies, oh my gosh, what policies can we, look at in terms of, that is, and I must say it, we're in line with the dying Māori narrative. And here we are sort of saying, well, no, that's not true. Ngāti Maru are saying, we're still here. We can put a label on it. So this is what, look at your policies, look at your research processes in terms of, where are you in terms of this policy? Are we still looking at sort of saying that Māori are non-existent, or are we sort of saying that actually they're right here? That's iwi data sovereignty right there. Done, dusted. I'm not standing here saying, how do you do it? We're already doing it. Because that's what's really important. Not just for me, not for Ngāti Maru, but for my moko, that are still going to be here. All of us are still going to be here because we're still alive. So, Manaaki Whenua, they looked at their policies, they looked at how they can make them different, and you know what? It took about 2 months to actually get the technology to import that notices, those labels into Manaaki Whenua. That's why I love Manaaki Whenua. I know there's a lot of you in here, but it's just, I will always praise how they did that in such a way. It wasn't just with Ngāti Maru. We had Te Whakatohea, Te Roroa and Ngāti Maru as 3 projects over a year to do the exact same thing for 2 other iwi. So it's possible to actually get these embedded in those areas. Okay, like I said, this how is really, really important. Like I said with Passamaquoddy looked at the rights field, the rights advisory field, and the rights advisory field sort of says, okay, the rights around the labels. But sometimes that's not possible because that rights advisory, permissions field, whatever it is in terms of IP law as a policy cannot have traditional knowledge labels. So then let's make them up. Let's make new ones, custom fields. Put them in. Traditional knowledge labels, biocultural labels, put a labels field in there. There we go. We've got a place for us now. We've got a place for us. It's that simple. Very, very simple. The marks mapping, we have a wonderful team. We have a wonderful API team that just does this with the majority are 48 platforms, 48 repositories, databases, how you want to see it, making sure that those fields can be made. Those are the metadata field options that we start to look at. It's me. Really? You have information about who, what, where, why this can happen. It's already happening here. There's already those that are doing it. And I really, really hope that you can get on with what Local Context is doing to sort of says, actually, we've got a lot of places we can put these labels and these notices. Also on that QR code is a short version, te hau o te taonga, in terms of Māori, and Māori on this side is the iwi, and over this side is the institutions and researchers. It's a very clear 2-pager to just have it in one go. But you want to start Really look at our newsletters, look at our website, look at our blogs, look at our movies, our films, movies. We've got one with Manaki Whenua with Te Roro, Te Whakatohia, Passamaquoddy. We got the movies all over to sort of say, in a short, succinct way, why, how, what, this can happen. Any questions? No questions? Okay, good. I'm off. Okay.
Ngā mihi nui, Janette, that was wonderful. You don't escape quite yet.
Okay.
I've got lots of questions, but I'll let from the floor. Do we have a question?
I know. Blow it away. Oh my gosh, Dave. Why are you going? Go. Yeah. No, you can come up here. Actually, you can be a big part of this. Come up here. Go for it.
Oh,
I know he's really, really into this, so.
Oh.
Here. We're coming. There we go.
I won't run off all over.
It's lovely to see you in the flesh.
Indeed. I was just going to ask, in terms of organisations that are trying to label data, what are you sort of seeing as the biggest barriers those organisations are facing in terms of what they need to overcome to kind of get the initiative to get data, get the labels on the data sets that they actually have? I don't mean that to sound negative, I actually mean that to sound sort of positive, but I'm just interested from the experiences of the different organisations you've engaged with, what are some of the sorts of things they need to overcome to allow them to then go and actually get the labelling process moving on large collections of items?
Good question. Great question. Policy. The policies don't help. They hinder. The policies are not there. The policies are saying that this is not where we go. It's policy first. If you're wanting to set up this so that you can have your flow, I want to say flow, the flow from policy to practice is really, really important by looking at the policies that work and looking at the policies that don't work. I'm going to say that really up front because that's all where you sit. You all sit in that policy area, and if you say, it's got nothing, policies have got nothing to do with it, policies got everything to do with everyone. We all have a choice on how those policies either work or those policies don't work. And start there, really, really get in tune with the collections, the samples that you already have, get in tune where it is, who it's with, and just start with a very short pilot, no high heat, people, no multiple iwi here, just one small pilot, and just start there. Start small. It's big, it's small, but we just start there. So policy, getting into understanding what's there for use, even as researchers, even if you're in those institutions. He says, well, we don't have policy on iwi data sovereignty. Right, that's a good question. Always be in the question of what can help and what can hinder. You have a choice on which part you want to be. Is your research helping to sort of say that we are the dying race, or is your research sort of helping that we are we're still here? But I really love that question because policy. I'm always going to say policy first. Kia ora. Kia ora.
Thank you. Any other questions? George, did you have a question? Since you've got the microphone.
I did have a question. This is ambitious, and it's much needed, but it is ambitious. And you've mentioned you've got an exponentially growing team, but how are you sort of stepping through, but building that awareness into so many different sort of stakeholder groups? You've got iwi who need to learn about this, and the opportunities it brings. You've got researchers who need to know it's something that they can do. You've got organisations. How do you cover all of that?
Great question. How do we cover it? How we cover it really is to go small. I said small before. No high heat. Te reti o Waitangi, high heat. Multiple iwi, high heat. Just, really you have collections on one iwi's land. Just start small. But for us as a team, we just got to keep on getting the examples that I've shown you today that it actually does work. Once before you came in here, didn't know that the iwi data sovereignty actually existed. Well, it does exist. And I'm trying to keep it in this individual. As you all walk out the door today as an individual, can I kind of say that, yeah, this actually does exist as an individual. Us as a team, we just keep getting the good examples. And you know what? Aotearoa, we're just doing it. The number 8 why? Well, it just happens. And it does. Because we use the technology, we get out there, we do the relationships. I'm going to say this probably over and over and over again. It's got to do with the relationships. It's got to do with the partnerships. It's got to do with those that, yes, don't want to know, and yes, that are just on the edge and sort of saying, ambition, it can happen, we can do this, it's already done, what can I do next? You're right about the ambitious. I didn't know I was going to be standing here in front of you today in terms of what was here, and I thought that was ambitious enough, but really it's because I'm here because of my moko, and I'm moko-led, and I know that we are still going to be on these lands, and I want our data to give our narrative, not to give somebody else's narrative of who we are. We've got to control the narrative of us. When I was talking about iwi here, we've got to control our narrative. And if that's the one thing that I asked to leave with today is, who's controlling whose narrative? Does that help? Does that help, George? Come on.
Thank you so much. Oh, we've got one more. Yep, one here. Oh.
Kia ora.
Have the information in their respective organisations. Is there like an online hub where everything is tagged as well, like a bit of a library, or is that kind of next stages that people can go online and find everything that's actually tagged?
Yes,
Indigenous
we have a registry.
communities.
So you can go on there, everybody that's on there, there's a registry of who's on the hub. Did you say the hub, sorry? Yeah, the hub itself has all the projects of who's on there doing which notices, on there who's doing which labels, so that you can see who's doing what.
But also things that are labelled.
Yes, that's definitely. So, for example, Ngāti Maru with Manaaki Whenua have already done that work. Okay, Te Whānau Apuni comes along and says, we want to work with Manaaki Whenua. It's already there in the hub. We go to Manaaki Whenua. They go to Manaaki Whenua. Why reinvent the wheel with Manaaki Whenua when it's already invented? So yes, we got a registry, everybody's notices, everybody's labels that are in there and being done. You got to show where they are. Nice question. Is that me? Can I go?
I think that's you. Thank you so much. Please give another round of applause. A small token.
Oh, good on,